Building a giant Adirondack chair is a really fun project. Just remember that with this project, you need to have somewhere to put it after it's built, because it's huge. Like any other project, we start with the lumber. This specific giant Adirondack chair is for a client and it will live its life outside. Couple of things to take into consideration here is that I know kids will be climbing all over it, so it needs to be strong. It will also be fully painted with a high grade exterior paint, and all the holes and knots will be filled. So I'm using basic construction 2x material. This lot consists of 2x6s, 8s, 10s, and 12s. Just let me know if you need a cut list or a breakdown of materials, and I'll be sure to get it to you. The most important aspect of picking out this wood is to get a tight-grained, straight, and dry pieces of wood as you can. Be sure to inspect this lumber for staples. Lumberyards and big box stores especially are notorious for loading up these boards with staples. Overall, when you're using construction lumber that is kiln dried, it's not fully dried because in its life, it's meant to be used to frame a house or a shed or a porch or whatever, and then be exposed to the elements to finish drying. Obviously, this will be painted as soon as it's built, so it won't have that extra dry time. So take your moisture meter and pick out as dry as you can and plan ahead. Get nice, tight, straight grain, and if you're picky, you can find wood in the 8 to 10 moisture content range at the big box stores and definitely at your local lumber yards. Be picky, go through it, and just know that this lumber will continue to dry and move as you work with it and as it sits over the next year or two. Okay, on to rough cutting. About half the material for this project can be cut to size on the chop box and then ripped to final width on the table saw. The seat slats, front legs, and cross pieces are all just simple rectangles. The other pieces, the arms, the rear legs, and so forth, are curved, so get them close to final size with the miter saw and table saw, but then you need to shape them differently. Creating the curved parts of this project is where you can really get creative and have a little fun. I'm working from a simple template that I've modified over the years, but feel free to have fun with the design. For this project, I'm keeping it simple and doubling my design. I start by measuring the straight edges and doubling those dimensions. Off those lines, I make reference marks as needed for the curved lines, doubling out those measurements. So if it's 1 inch off, we go to 2 inches off. If it's 2 inches off, we go to 4 inches off, and so forth. Then it's simply connecting the dots and working it until you have the shape you want. There are many ways to cut out these shapes. I typically use a bandsaw for my Adirondack chairs, but for this giant version, I find it easier to bring the tool to the wood and use a jigsaw. All of the shaped pieces are doubles except for the center seat back slat. For those pieces, I design one of them, cut it out as close as I can to the line, and then use that piece as my template for the matching piece. Time to sand and shape the edges. Be sure to keep your sandpaper clean with an abrasive belt and disc cleaning block. This will really prolong the life of your sandpaper. This is the upper rear support slat that I cut on a 27-degree angle. It's best to cut this on the bandsaw, as this shape is critical to get right and for the overall comfort of the chair. If it's less than 27 degrees, it gets too vertical, and if it's more than 27 degrees, you feel like you're laying down. I like a large roundover bit on these chairs since people climb all over them and slide against them and lean against them and stand on them. I find rounding over both sides of any exposed edge with a 1/2 inch roundover bit really smooths out the edges nicely and cuts down on any splintering that may occur. Last thing you would want is for a small splinter to occur and start tearing or catching on people's clothes. Now be sure to keep in mind that anywhere you have an edge on one of these pieces that comes in full contact with another piece, you don't want to route that edge. Keep those edges straight so you can get a nice tight joint during assembly. There are lots of pieces to route on these Giant Adirondack chairs, and it seems like it's never ending. But this is a key part of the project to get right. Finally, it's time to assemble. I use a 2 7/8 inch Timberlock exterior screw with large screw heads and a nice flat head. It's the same screw I would use to, say, frame a deck or build a porch or a shed. You need to keep in mind that kids and grown-ups as well will be climbing all over these chairs, and you need it to be strong. I pre-drill for each screw I use and then use a Forstner bit to act as a countersink. This works great. The flat head sits in there nice, and it's really easy to fill later. After you get the front rail attached to the large rear legs, you then attach the rear lower support rest to the flat part of those legs. Measuring back 32 inches from both sides, I use 2 timber locks on both sides to keep it in place. This is the first part of the build that you need to pay close attention on. When attaching the rear legs to the front legs, you need to make sure all the legs are stable on the ground and the front crosspiece is level between the 2 front legs. You don't want any rocking on these large Adirondack chairs. It's a little tricky to do by yourself, but totally doable. nailed it! With the legs clamped in place, you mark and drill for the through bolts. Be sure to use heavy-duty exterior-grade carriage bolts with large washers and nuts. Repeat for the other side. Next, we fasten the arm supports to the front legs and get ready to attach the arms. I like to use a large parallel clamp here to hold the arms in place while marking and attaching it. This is another critical step in the process. Make sure that the arms are in line with the legs below. Since they are quite long on these Giant Adirondack chairs, even a few degrees off will totally mess up the layout of the seat back slats. Make sure you pre-drill. You don't want anything splitting now. Here, we attach the upper rear support slat that has the 27-degree slant cut into it. This piece goes under the arms for that classic Adirondack chair look. I through bolt it with 2 carriage bolts as well. And the best reason to be working from a home shop during this pandemic in 3, 2, 1. Time for the back seat slats. First, find the center on the lower support as well as the center seat back. Line it up and attach it to the lower support, checking to make sure it is square to the lower support. Then skip to one of the outer seat backs and attach it to the lower seat support, keeping it square and plumb. From there, Install the intermediate seat back, centering it between those two back pieces. Then repeat it on the other side. At this point, I wait on installing the seat slats to start filling holes, sanding, and starting the painting process. Mainly because these chairs are so big, it makes it so much easier to be able to get inside of it. I like using Bondo to fill the screw holes on these chairs. It dries fast, doesn't shrink, holds up outside great, and is very, very sandable. It also paints beautifully after you sand it. There are other products that work well, but this stuff is great. I fill each hole, sometimes add a second coat if I need to. I like to fill the knot holes in the wood now as well. Any little step now to keep water out will help keep this chair in great condition for many years to come. After it's sanded down flush, primed and painted, all the patches disappear. After a good sanding, I put a full coat of primer on and then put my first coat of paint with the seat slats still off. The client chose the paint color to honor their favorite football team's vintage colors.
Fly, Eagles, fly, on the road to victory. Fly, Eagles, fly, score a touchdown, 1, 2, 3. Hit 'em low, hit 'em high, and watch our Eagles fly. Fly, Eagles, fly, on the road to victory. E-A-T-L-E-S, Eagles!
I do the same process for the seat slats and then get them installed. After a quick fill and sanding of the seat slat screw holes, be sure to remember to apply a touch-up coat of primer to the tops of the seat slats. You want to ensure a good bond with the paint, and the filled holes will bleed through the paint if you skip this step. One last top coat for the entire chair, and you're done. The client for this chair asked for their family name to be across the front of the chair. I asked Santa to help me load it up to officially make this the coolest Christmas present ever. Off it goes to its new home. Thanks so much for watching. Please let me know what you think in the comments, as I love to hear from you. Be sure to subscribe as well. It gives me the confidence to keep making these videos. Thanks.